Hello and welcome to this program on grammar. In this series of videos, we're going to examine meaning patterns and introduce you to an overview of transpositional grammar. Now, grammar sounds like a boring thing to be doing, perhaps even a waste of time. If you're thinking that, it's probably because you have a very old idea of grammar in your mind, one that perhaps you got from school. Parsing nouns and verbs and clauses and sentences, and then some rules about how to write correctly, all the stuff we had to learn off by heart at school. Forget about that. I can imagine you saying, let's just read and write. We don't really need it, and this is just what some literary educators said in the second half of the 20th century. Just immerse learners in good books, get them started with that, and then to write freely without the constraints of traditional grammar. In this series of videos, we are going to introduce you to a more expansive view of grammar, one which is more useful to the everyday business of meaning making.
But what do we mean by grammar? We've got a straightforward definition of grammar, which is patterns in meaning, and the business of doing grammar then is about making sense of these patterns. But why would we do it? Can't we just go about our everyday lives, meaning as we do, without having to reflect on the meanings of meanings? Of course we can, but there are many places where it's efficient and productive to reflect on our meanings. Professionals do this all the time. Web designers, architects, photographers, doctors, writers, videographers, all develop specialist languages to speak about the meanings they are making, whether that's on screens, in spaces, in taking the images they do as part of their work, in the medical notes they write about bodies if they're in the medical profession, in the reports they are writing, in the videos they're making, just to give a few examples. We're always talking about how we're making meaning. Also, teachers do it because it's how they generalize about the patterns of meaning in the world, understanding that their learners can transfer from the classroom or the online course, if it is that, to the world itself. We often need to speak in pattern languages, if you like, in many, many places. Whether we're professionals or whether we're teachers, they're just two examples. So this is what we mean by grammar. It's the pattern language that we use to describe the meanings that we make.
Michael Halliday and Rakaya Hassan are perhaps our greatest influences in creating the grammar we're about to outline for you. Here is what Michael Halliday had to say about grammar. A grammar is a resource for meaning, the critical functioning semiotic by means of which we pursue our everyday life. It therefore embodies a theory of everyday life, otherwise it cannot function in this way. So for him, this is what he said, a grammar is a theory of human experience. So here's a sentence. I'm walking towards Bill. There's a noun, there's a verb, subject and object. Even using these old-fashioned grammar terms, we learn about patterns in meaning. Inspired by Halliday and Hassan, we want to expand the theory of experience to cover more than language, which we need to do particularly today because so much of our making of meaning is with digital tools and what we call multimodal. I might be walking towards Bill in a video. I might be walking towards Bill in an architected space, such as a shop, where the pattern of my potential walking has been anticipated by its design. Or I might be on the phone telling a third person where I am going and expecting that they look out for me. Or my walking may be tracked by the GPS in my phone. What is the same and different about these meanings? We want to develop a general way to describe these meanings, one that can help educators, videographers, architects, and computer scientists to talk to each other.
We call the pattern language that we've developed to describe these realities a transpositional grammar. We mean several things by this, but the first is that we can mean the same thing in different ways. We call these different forms of meaning. Text or writing is one form of meaning. Speech is another. Image, space, object, body, and sound are still others. So transposition is the movement between one form of meaning and another. Meaning is always an act of transposition, a journey from one form to another, writing something down that we have experienced, making an object from a drawing, gesturing to something, moving about the space to get something done. Our aim in this transpositional grammar then is to describe the ways in which we make these moves.